Welcome everyone. I am Adesewa Josh and this is Africa Matters. It's the biggest corruption case in Mozambique's history with 19 high-ranking officials on trial. But will they be held accountable? As the world marks World AIDS Day, we'll follow an NGO in South Africa that's battling stigma by encouraging young men to get tested for HIV. And in the Gambia, the families of 70 children who died after taking toxic cough syrups are still waiting for answers and proper compensation from the government. "19 powerful figures are facing prison sentences for financial crimes in Mozambique. Senior government officials, including the son of former President Armando Guebuza, are accused of embezzling at least $200 million from a government-backed loan scheme between 2013 and 2014. The former finance minister, Manuel Chang, who signed off on the loans with Swiss and Russian banks, was held in South Africa since 2018. He's waiting to be extradited to the United States for allegedly using the U.S. financial system to orchestrate the fraudulent scheme. The loan was meant to help develop the country's fishing industry and maritime security. Instead, prosecutors say the defendants diverted the funds for personal use and paying kickbacks. When the scandal broke in 2016, the IMF and World Bank immediately suspended funding to Mozambique, triggering a sovereign debt default that crashed the Mozambican currency and economy. Judge Efigênio Baptista of the Maputo City Court hopes to send a strong zero-tolerance message against corruption.
For Armando Dambe Guebuza, 1 count of criminal association, 1 count of blackmail, 1 of influence peddling, 4 counts of forgery, 4 counts of using false documents, 1 count of embezzlement, 1 count of money laundering.
In May, the IMF resumed lending to Mozambique, awarding a $456 million loan to support economic recovery and reduce public debt. But the crisis has had far-reaching consequences. Let's take a closer look at some of its broader impacts. Transparency International says nearly 2 million people in Mozambique have become poorer since the corruption scandal, while the World Bank says it was a key driver of the economic recession that hit Mozambique in 2016. A Transparency International report also shows that the Mozambican government was unable to fund its ambitious free education scheme, falling short in part due to corruption. The report also shows that the wealth of rich Mozambican elites has grown 3 times faster since the scandal, widening the gap between rich and poor. Let's hear more from Borges Nhamirre, a research consultant at the Institute for Security Studies. He joins me from Maputo. Thank you so much for making the time. Look, it's become quite common to see the government investigate corruption cases like this one. What makes this case different?
Good morning. What makes this case different is that we have state intelligence officers involved in big case of corruption. Generally, we see politicians who are involved in corruption cases. But for this time, we have the former head of intelligence service in Mozambique who is a defendant. We also have other deputy directors. So if we see to understand, we see that intelligence service are the one taken as the most important institution in the countries, which works to protect the country. But now they are themselves who are involved in the corruption, first. And secondly, we see that those a high-level, high-profile intelligence officers have been partnering with the politician, including the son of former president, to do this a very big corruption, which in terms of amount, it's more than 10% of Mozambique GDP. So this is more than just a case of corruption. This is a case of state capture.
I was about to say that to you, Borges. I was going to say, does this sound like state capture, the one we saw in South Africa, and that is still being pulled around in court to you? Civil society groups say that the top politicians who approved the loan are not on trial. Do you think they will ever be prosecuted?
I'm not so hopeful that the top leaders of the country, the politician, and let's say here their names. We are talking about the former president, Armando Emilio Guebuza, the one we can see here in footage. So he was the head of the state when the debt has been contracted. So now what is happening? We see that his son is sitting before the court in trial. His political advisor is there. His personal assistant is there, but he's not there as a defendant. So the question is how a privy vest, this company could bribe president's son, bribe president political advisor, bribe president assistant. For what? Those people, they could not take decision. The one who had enough power to take decision is Mr. Gibuza, and Mr. Gibuza is not sitting before the court to respond for his role on this debt. So, and I'm not hopeful that this is something that will happen in Mozambique, because we are still in a situation that the executive power have control over the judiciary and over the parliament.
You know, I haven't really seen it anywhere in your history that you're actually bringing politicians and former intelligence officials to books and having them sit in the dock in real time to answer for their alleged criminal activities. Do you think this sort of stuff would deter corruption in the nearest future in your country?
I'm not so hopeful on that. I'm sorry for being pessimistic, but first of all, because this case did not start in Mozambique. This is a case that has started in the United States when the American authorities arrested our former Minister of Finance in Johannesburg in 2018. So this is the trigger of this trial. So otherwise, those people, if the American authority would not started this case, I believe that those people, this trial could not have existed now. Secondly, it's because when we look to those people, all of them, they are still proud of what they have done. President Gibuza himself, he says that, look, if I had opportunity to do it again, I could do it again. So none of them feels that he did wrong for the country. They are still proud of what they have done. They are proud of what have they done. And also the mechanism of check and balances between judiciary, parliament, and executive power has not been improved. So I think this is a very single case, and I don't expect that this is something that will change how the things are happening in Mozambique.
You actually hit the nail on the head when you said, look, we wouldn't have heard of this case if it had not started in the United States. And I also, if you agree with me that the extent to which money was stolen, if it had not been aided and abetted by some of the officials at the Credit Suisse, do you think this case would have even gone this far?
No. We have several cases in Mozambique. They are just are not brought before the court because they are very internal cases. So I can tell you a couple of cases which we had trial and we know what happened. This is one because it involves American authorities. The banks which were utilized to pipe the money are American banks first. And we had another case linked to Embraer, the Brazilian aircraft companies, which also involve American authorities. So this case, I believe, has just come to the court because this is a case linked to foreign authorities, linked to Credit Suisse employees, linked to British authorities, were allocated the banks which gave the loan. But if it was only internal cases, I don't believe the case will be here today on discussion in the court.
How do you see this end?
Well, let's first say this is a very long case, which will have to wait maybe more 2 to 3 years until it comes over, because there are appeals that those people will have, of course, to apply for. We see that those people have got money, too much money to pay good lawyers, so they will appeal, they will challenge the court decision, so it will go through more 2 courts at least. So until there's a final decision, we will have more than 2 or even 3 years. That's one technical issue. But a second issue is that we need to have a kind of change politically. Those who are leading the country, they need to change, to understand that they are there not to benefit from the country's wealth. They are there to serve to the people. And this is not happening. Let me tell you something. Let me tell something to the audience. I would not be surprised if in 2 years' time, the current president of Mozambique is found that is also implicated in a similar hidden debt case.
That's
because the
interesting.
politician in Mozambique, they have no check and balance. It's simply like that.
It is so hard to imagine how this is taking a toll on the morals of the Mozambicans themselves. And I hope this justice is served indeed. Thank you so much, Borges Nhamirre, research consultant at the Institute for Security Studies. Your thoughts and your ideas is absolutely appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
The UN says the world is not on track to end the HIV and AIDS pandemic. Its latest report says gender inequality and toxic masculinity contribute to the continued spread of the virus, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. In South Africa, which has the most HIV cases in the world, the problem is being compounded by fear of stigmatization. That leads to a lack of testing, particularly among men. Nsepek Mutema reports from Tembisa Township on efforts to change that trend.
These men are from Engagements Health, an NGO that provides free testing and treatment.
This project is very important for guys, yeah? Simply because it provides an intimate privacy. Because even if they couldn't come, we can still arrange with one of them that we're not comfortable to come here, to go to their place without anyone knowing.
Studies have found that fear of discrimination at public health facilities often prevents men from getting tested. Others say they do not trust their local clinics because they don't believe nurses who live in the same communities will keep their status confidential. Nkululeko Mhlophe works at one of the supermarkets here. He says it's his first time getting an HIV test.
I am so proud because I have wanted to know for some time what my status is. And I was nervous, but things went smoothly. I am really proud. I can't hold myself back.
There are more than 7 million people living with HIV in South Africa, making it the epicenter of the pandemic.
In the past 2 decades, South Africa has made advances in the fight against HIV and AIDS. More people are receiving antiretroviral treatment to fight the virus. Women now have access to medication which protects children from infection during pregnancy.
There's also been an improvement in the public's understanding of the virus, officials say. But those living with HIV say they are still battling the stigma.
I would like just to welcome you.
Dion Chuma is HIV positive and works to raise awareness in his community. He is hosting his neighbors to talk about how together they can fight against the culture of shaming.
So, like having such sessions, it helps one another. It also helps me, like to share the knowledge that I have with the community.
Zodwa Langa, one of the attendants, says today's session has opened her eyes.
We have people here in the community who are ill, and sometimes the ambulance takes too long to arrive. There are ways that we can support them, and that's by showing them love.
As the world marks World AIDS Day, the joint UN program on HIV and AIDS has released a damning report saying that despite major advances in treating the virus, inequalities are stopping the world from ending AIDS. The advocacy group is calling on communities to confront them through bold action. Chuma and his guests are already playing their part and are calling on others to join the fight. Nsepeng Mutema, Africa Matters, Tembisa Township, South Africa.
Through the Gambia now, where the families of 70 children who died after taking toxic cough syrups are waiting for answers. They rejected a combined $20,000 compensation payment from the government, saying it's an insult to their children's memories. Maimuna Ba brings us their story from Banjul.
Mariama Kuyate is still mourning the death of her son. She is among dozens of parents who lost their children to acute kidney injury linked to a contaminated cough syrup imported from India. In a bid to console parents like Mariama, the Gambian government has offered them around $285 in compensation per child. Kuyate says the amount is a disgrace.
We, the victims, are going through a lot of challenges, and the government does not seem to be considerate of our plight. We want justice to prevail.
A rejection of government's compensation to the families has sparked an angry debate on social media platforms. and also drawn mixed reactions among lawmakers.
It was a compensation, then I think it's very insulting. For me, I was taking it to be a donation, like a charity. It's a norm in this country when people die, families, women of bereavement.
But Gambians have a mixed view on whether the government's offer should have been accepted.
The government should have acknowledged that this is our responsibility and we have failed Gambians to some extent.
It is just by accident. The government wouldn't have the intention of killing those children. They should have taken the compensation. It is a sign of sympathy.
The Gambian police estimate that about 50,000 bottles of cough and cold syrups were contaminated. President Adama Barrow has since promised to tighten regulation by creating a national laboratory for drugs and food safety.
Fellow Gambians, residents of the Gambia, I assure you all that government will leave no stone unturned to get to the bottom of this incident. I urge you, however, to be vigilant enough to ensure that all medicines sold or used are safe and effective.
But the families are also calling on the country's medical control agency to officially withdraw its initial claim that the children died in recent floods and not from the toxic cough medicine, and bring those responsible for their children's death to face justice. Maimuna Ba, Africa Matters, Banjul, Gambia.
The World Health Organization estimates up to 4 million people around the world contract cholera every year. Outbreaks are usually linked to a lack of safe drinking water and poor sanitation. Cholera is endemic in Malawi, and since March, more than 9,400 people have been infected and nearly 300 people have died in what is being described as the worst outbreak in a decade. Taibe Aydin reports on how hospitals are coping.
This is the oral cholera vaccine, and Malawian Eliza Tangwe is lucky to have it. The current cholera outbreak in Malawi is the most severe in a decade.
The disease is spreading very fast because of a lack of hygiene. We are eating everything that our hands can find, so I have taken my vaccine to not contract cholera.
The Ministry of Health declared a cholera outbreak in Malawi in March. The Malawian healthcare system is overwhelmed and it lacks supplies.
The vaccines are very important because from our census, from the cases that we had, of the 32 cases, all of them did not receive the oral cholera vaccine. So it means that for those that received, they are fine. So it means if more people get the vaccine, I think we can reduce the cases.
The mortality rate of cholera has increased in the past 9 months. Malawi is adopting a single-dose strategy, but it needs 2 doses to be most effective.
When you want, you know what to do, but then you don't have this. You don't have enough equipment, and you don't have the supplies and the resources that you need to conduct your or to deliver your work. Then that comes a challenge and a drawback for you to deliver.
A person can get cholera by drinking water or eating food contaminated with the bacteria. This is usually due to inadequate water treatment and poor sanitation. Even basic chlorinization works to reduce the rate.
When patients that had cholera are discharged from the camp, we make sure to provide guardians with chlorinated water. This is what they will be drinking when they go home. So here I was demonstrating and explaining how they will be using it.
The ongoing problem of contaminated drinking water and poor sanitation has made cholera an epidemic in at least 20 countries in Africa and Asia. Taiba Aydin, Africa Matters.
Africa's visually impaired citizens have long been left behind, struggling to find adequate education or assistance. Fortunately, help is on the horizon, courtesy of a Nigerian tech startup, which makes it easier for blind people to fulfill their aspirations, as Rupert Stone reports.
For years, this blind Nigerian student had to rely on Braille to read, but now he uses an app that translates text into audio.
Actually, I would prefer this app because there are many things that I will see outside there, and maybe it will not be in Braille, it may be in sighted, so this app will help me to recognize it.
The app was designed by local startup Vinsight, which is providing technology to offer new hope for the visually impaired.
I just felt everybody should have the same level of inclusiveness, right? Everybody should have the right to education and right to a good well-being.
There are more than 26 million visually impaired people in Africa, according to the World Health Organization. The Nigeria government says more than 1.5 million of their citizens are blind. Blind people in Africa have for years struggled with poor educational opportunities. Balogun Marion, who serves in the Lagos State Office for Disability Affairs, is partly blind and used the Vinsight app at university.
Nigerian government is actually trying, at least now, they are giving space like slots for those that are visually impaired, even other disabilities, jobs, opportunities for jobs and everything.
Vinsight is also producing eyeglasses which, like the app, converts text into audio. While there is a long road ahead, products like this could be a game changer for Africa's blind population. Rupert Stone, Africa Matters.
After 9 long months, a ban preventing Kenya from participating in international football games has been lifted. It's great news for the country's many aspiring footballers. Rahul Radhakrishnan has more about one community football league that's helping to keep the dream alive.
The FIFA World Cup in Qatar has everyone's attention on the beautiful game. But it's extra inspirational for some here in the Kenyan neighborhood of Kibera, just outside the capital Nairobi, where an independent community football league is helping people turn their lives around.
Football is everything to me. If not for football, for now I could be dead or in jail. I use football for a living. It has made me to be a person in my community and a useful person in my area.
Elijah is a convicted criminal. He was locked up for carrying out violent robberies. But he's done his time and is now determined to turn over a new leaf. And mentors like Eric are offering him a chance.
Interbase League, this is a league which is played, we normally call it an amateur league, played within a slum settlement. Basically, the league was introduced to end the things to do with the crime and drugs in our society.
Eric founded the league in 2019 after a childhood friend of his was killed while committing a crime. He says the fear of losing more friends to crime inspired him to start the league.
A lot of people are being killed in our society, and football was the only uniting factor which could unite us as a one family. And that's normally we say that football unites, and that's the only language we use to end crime in our society.
He hopes that one day the league will expand to include divisions for women and children. Fans here crowd at the pitch to show their support. Their hopes are high, especially since FIFA lifted a 9-month ban imposed over allegations of graft in the Kenyan Football Federation. For the players, it's the beautiful game that's helped them leave behind their lives of crime. Rahul Radhakrishnan, Africa Matters.
This week we explore Sokoto, a city in northwestern Nigeria. Sokoto Sultanate, the caliphate's spiritual and political leader, has a seat in the city. Have a look. And that's our show for this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode. or ideas on what you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag Africa Matters. Feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle at Adesewa Josh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment, and share. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next week.